Lawrence Tech. Possible is everything.
Number 5, Kevin Glenn, Detroit St. Martin DePorres. Although closed for well over a decade now, Detroit DePorres High School will be remembered as one of the greatest sports schools ever. 39 state championships in total. A 4-year, 3-sport star quarterback in the mid-90s, Kevin Glenn. Considered to be undersized, Glenn cast aside the doubters, grabbed the starting job as a freshman. One of the best ever at throwing on the run, Glenn was the guts and glue for DePorres. Check these career stats. Over 6,200 passing yards, 68 touchdowns. Over 2,500 yards rushing, more than 25 scores. This against the wicked Catholic League Central West Division that included Detroit Catholic Central and Orchard Lake St. Mary's. With new head coach Greg Carter, the Eagles won back-to-back double C titles with Glenn under center in 95 and 96. That, their 9th and 10th respectively. Glenn won a basketball state title to boot.
Actually, I don't think Kevin was going to attend DePorres, but he wound up coming to DePorres. I think the Detroit Public Schools may have been on strike. And so his mother didn't want him out of school, so he wound up at DePorres, and it was definitely a blessing for us. He had an opportunity as a 9th grader to start and be our quarterback. Led us to 2 state championships his last 2 years, his junior and senior year. Got better each and every year. Gets mad right now that we allow our quarterbacks to do so much more than he was able to do when he was a quarterback here. But just an outstanding guy, definitely a leader.
Just phenomenal player. Had the scrambling ability to get out of the pocket and extend plays, but also had a very strong ability with sitting in the pocket and delivering passes to outside receivers, inside receivers, tight ends. Coach Carter did a phenomenal job at developing a system that fit the nuances of football, yet maintained the poise and the integrity that DePorres football was all about, which was running the football inside the tackle. So Kevin made what we did look very, very good.
Determined to remain a QB, Glenn went on to play at Illinois State, where he set 25 school records. Glenn has competed at the highest level in the Canadian Football League for 17 years and is still playing. Considered one of the best QBs in CFL history. Continually having to prove himself, Glenn is the only player to have his rights held by every single team in the league. Number 4. Jason Fracassa, Sterling Heights, Stevenson. The grandson of legendary coach Al Fracassa, Jason Fracassa was quite simply a 4-year phenom. At the time of his graduation, Jason owned 6 MHSAA passing records, including yards in a season and a career, attempts and completions in a season and a career. His most impressive, over 10,000 career passing yards, are 2,000 better than second place. In 2009, Fracassa won the state champs Mr. Football Award, scoring over 28 points per game in a season that got his Titans to the state championship game. He was also Gatorade Player of the Year and a Dream Teamer.
I remember him throwing the ball when he was 3 or 4 years old. I mean, he started really young, and he became really good at it. And in a way, I'm glad that he went to another school, because I didn't have the pressure of the grandfather coaching the grandson, you know. And if he did very well, they would probably, a lot of people would say, well, look what he did, you know, he let him play all the time. But he broke all the records in Michigan.
Well, he's your gunslinger. You know, I don't know if that term was around at that time, if they were calling quarterbacks gunslingers, but that's what he was. I mean, he just got back and winged it.
He was very accurate, too. That was one of the things that I really liked about him. He could throw the ball, you know, put it on the money, and then he also could throw the deep ball as well.
I think he was fearless, and he was a kid that, because of his background and his grandfather, he'd been around football all his life, and he was a natural. And I think that's what really skyrocketed him to the top.
Fracassa accepted a scholarship to play both football and baseball at Northwood University. He eventually transferred to Walsh University in Ohio, where he finished up with a solid year and a half at QB. Number 3, Keith Nichol, Lowell. Back to the left coast, and one who, like Devin Gardner, played both receiver and quarterback in college, only this time at Michigan State. a highly sought-after recruit. This two-time Class A Associated Press Player of the Year was a 3-year starter in Noel Dean's offense. Keith carved up over 9,600 career yards, 134 touchdowns. As a sophomore in 2004, Nichol led the Red Arrows to a state title.
Keith was an amazing player, but more so a person. He was just a hard-working, dedicated, that treated people really, really well. I think my best quarterbacks all treated everybody else really well, whether they were football players or not. And and Keith just had an amazing arm strength, and he could run really well. And so he did a lot of pretty crazy things for us. And I really enjoyed coaching him. He was just one of those once-in-a-while talent.
He was a challenge. Every time you went into the game, you're like, you always have to identify that player on offense. Well, it was a no-doubter. Keith Nichol was the guy you had to stop. He could beat you with his arm. He could beat you with his legs. He was also going to, he'd run over you if he had to, run around you if he had to. And you know what? Here's the other thing. He was a classy young man, classy kid to coach against, very humble. He was just a gentleman on the field and off the field, and that has gone forward today in his career as you watch him prosper in the world today after a great career at Michigan State.
Keith began his college career at Oklahoma as Sam Bradford's backup, transferred to Michigan State, and contributed under center as well as a split end. Keith caught at least one pass in 24 games and completed 54% of his passes. Number 2, Drew Henson, Brighton. When you begin to design and define what a super elite multi-sport athlete looks like, Drew Henson is who you draw up. A baseball and football megastar in the mid-90s, Drew was devastating, hitting a national record 70 home runs, a 40-game winner on the mound with well over 500 strikeouts on the diamond, on the gridiron. 18-3 his final 2 years, Henson completed 400 passes for over 5,600 yards, amassing 52 touchdowns for the Bulldogs. He was the National Player of the Year in both sports.
We went against Drew in passing league over at Eastern Michigan, and I knew his dad real well from recruiting for Eastern, His size and his arm were amazing. I was a baseball coach too, so we were amazed with his baseball ability, both of them. Outstanding two-way athlete.
Drew Henson was so far above physically in my 35 years of coaching. I've never seen a kid, a junior in high school, look like he looked. I mean, he was a man playing with boys. He was strong. He threw it like a pro then. To this day, I'll say he is by far the best high school athlete I've ever seen.
He was a kid that lived up to that hype. I mean, he came through in the big games, and I know they didn't win a lot in the playoffs. In fact, they only made the playoffs one time, but back then, not as many teams made the playoffs as they do now, so that those numbers are a little bit skewed. But as far as his ability, I mean, everything was there. His size, his weight, his strength, his speed.
Henson chose football at the collegiate level and had an outstanding career at Michigan. Drew was drafted by the Houston Texans and by the New York Yankees. Drew chose baseball, never really panned out in the bigs, came back to football in 2004, spending time with the Dallas Cowboys, Minnesota Vikings, and the Detroit Lions. Drew is now back in baseball as a scout for the Yankees. Number 1, Drew Stanton, Farmington Hills, Harrison. This Oregon boy moved to Southeast Michigan after his sophomore year. First order of business, find a great football program. Our number 1 high school quarterback in the past 25 years, none other than Drew Stanton. The Stanton family picked to play for who is now Michigan's all-time winningest coach, Farmington Hills Harrison's John Harrington.
When Drew first came here, he had just left Oregon and had been in a big baseball tournament, and his arm was sore. So I said, well, he's a big kid. He can throw a little bit, but I got a game Shabai, who was really a good quarterback, coming back. Then his father was looking for a place because he'd relocated over here. And then I went on vacation. I came back, and Drew's there, and then he's throwing the ball all over the place and looking great. And of course, then I got to know him a little bit and knew what type of kid he was. Actually, he didn't start the first 2 games for us his junior year, but then I wised up and he started all the rest.
Man, high school football to me is still some of the best memories. and I've been fortunate to play in every Big Ten stadium, to play some big-time college football games, to play in the NFL, again, to go to Lambeau Field, and to play at some of the most historical sites that you can play football in. But Buller Field, to me, will always hold a special place in my heart because of the memories, the friendships that were formed there.
During his 2 years at the helm of the Hawks, Stanton led his teams to back-to-back D3 state titles in 2000 and 2001. The latter, a perfect 14-0. 259 total yards and 3 scores in the 2001 championship game.
He was an exceptional player because he could read the defense and he could place that ball in tight windows. He had a very strong arm. He could put that ball there. I like that a lot. When I saw him play, I was like, wow, that's a quarterback. That's what I said.
Drew threw for almost 3,000 career yards, 60 touchdowns. He had a 65% completion rate. Free Press and Detroit News Dream Teamer, Super Prep, Prep Star, and Max Emfinger All-American. 4 national publications ranked Drew Stanton among the top 20 quarterbacks in the nation in 2001.
There's the question, should it be this Drew or that Drew? And you could go around a table and have everybody give their 2 cents worth on it. Personally, Stanton won state titles. Stanton, was that winner consistently. Henson was an outstanding quarterback. He put up great numbers, and maybe, obviously his supporting cast wasn't as good as at Harrison. But I look, and I did that when I was with the Detroit News too. If I look at a quarterback that was 13-0 as opposed, and all things being equal, as opposed to a quarterback that went 7-2, lost first round of the playoffs, I would side with that 13-0.
It's an extreme honor. You look at the history of guys that have come through here that have played quarterback in the state of Michigan. A lot have gone on to great careers, and a lot of guys were phenomenal high school players. So to be able to carry that torch is something that is an extremely high honor for me. You look at guys like Drew Henson, Kirk Cousins, Keith Nichols, those are the guys that come off the bat because they're my friends, but also guys that were very highly touted, guys that went on to have great careers, that were high school quarterbacks that are legends in their own right. So to be able to be at the top of that list for the last 25 years is something that is very nice to be able to hang my hat on. But at the same time, football is a team game. The quarterback gets a lot of credit, and we were 28-0. My 2 years there, we ended up, I think, number 5 in the nation in the USA Today. The players that were around me made me the player that I was and that I continue to be. And I know that, I realize that, but it's an honor that I'm very proud to accept.
At Michigan State, Stanton earned academic All-American status. He threw for over 6,500 yards, 42 touchdowns, and was drafted with the 43rd overall pick by the Detroit Lions in 2007. Besides the Lions, Drew spent the last 4 seasons with Arizona. This past offseason, he signed a 2-year deal with the Cleveland Browns.